Hello everyone, today is Monday, it's the 29th of April 2025. Alright, I've done a number of videos on the Pope who has just died, and I'm going to leave it for the time being. I'm not going to touch the subject any longer. Perhaps I will have something to say, I'm not sure, after the new Pope has been elected. Except that I wanted to share one or two things with you. Things like the cross that he wore, which was not, after all, a crucifix, is the one, in the tomb, is the one who is put there. I'll discuss that with you. Perhaps when I can get better pictures, I will do it on Sunday in the live stream and talk about several other things that I found disturbing, but this is not the time. However, I did see, since the cardinals are going to get together, I heard with surprise that one of the candidates might be Cardinal Tagle from the Philippines. I was quite surprised because the Pope got all these cardinals from all the, the furthest corners of the world. And I had actually seen a video of this cardinal, which he doesn't look as good as he looks in the full cardinal attire. He's actually there in a church singing and dancing. And he is now, he didn't seem to me a candidate at all, not even to vote. But nevertheless, now they're saying that he could be one of them. Okay, so I'll leave that, okay? But this thing about this cardinal prompted me to think of other things. Because when you see, whether it is in this case or whether it is in politics or in business or in academia, whenever you see a person who is promoted a little bit too rapidly, I am concerned, if I am aware of it anyway. Because in many cases, they are not quite ready for the job. In other words, they have not grown into it, organically, step by step kind of thing. So that when you grow in your career naturally, the next step, you can handle it with ease. Step up the ladder, you can handle it with ease, more easily, more naturally. If not, it's like that person who comes into money, by way of the lottery or something. Not used to his wealth, he needs to display it for everyone to see it, just in case you didn't notice. And it's the same in politics, and it's the same everywhere else. In politics is newly acquired power. Those who are used to power don't need to go around necessarily showing you how powerful they are. It's usually the newcomers who have the need to display themselves. So I was pondering about this. And I got to the state of our democracy and went back to the classics to inspire me to say something. Because the ancients also, as it is with us now, had to deal with the same situations, had to deal with the same kind of politicians we have now, with rulers that seem to want one thing and say another, and yet not clever enough, many of them, to even hide what they want. and times when leaders, as now, they had to deal with leaders who had nothing to offer but chaos and war. It is like a plagiarism of democracy. So I went back to the classics and ancient history and literature. People who wrote about their times. People who wrote histories, but and also people, the comedians, the ones who wrote comedies. Plautus and Terence in Rome. Aristophenes before in Greece. And let me just go through a few things. Plagiarism of democracy, I said, because there are democracies and there are democracies. The democracy of Pericles, the Periclean pattern of democracy, was not the same as the one who succeeded it. There is a great deal of difference between a young democracy and a full-grown democracy. In the first young democracy, aristocracy still lingers a little bit. There is such a thing as an aristocratic democrat. You can think of some. Highly educated, highly cultivated people who will not be amused by the commonplace. But 4th century Athens was different now. The aristocracy was gone by then. And now there was no need and no one wanted to fight or to suffer on behalf of the state. People wanted to be comfortable. They wanted to live not a heroic life, leave me alone, an easy middle-class life, an undistinguished life. And comedy reflects its age, as it does now. Pericles was an aristocratic democrat. Menander, the comedian, represented the other type. Menander made comedy for the people who wanted safety. The ones always ready to perhaps even face with the heroic and the extraordinary accuse and point the finger to the brave. Perhaps to hide their cowardice. So Menander wrote about funny little dreams and the dreams and the little dramas of little folk. It was art. He's not one of the best. It was miniature art in pastel colors, pastel tones, subdued pictures of a well-to-do, completely commonplace society, showing always that the bad were punished and the good were rewarded, but always moderately. Vices were moderate, virtues were moderate, and there was always a happy marriage at the end to bring the curtain down. Aristophanes the Greek would have laughed at this. He would consider mediocrity. No soaring imagination, nor roaring laughter. And this change happened within a 50-year period. Very quick. That flowering of genius, that lofty, that exultant spirit conscious still of its heroic deeds, those heroic deeds that they had done, full of joyous courage for great enterprises to come. And that flame so intense, so hot, quickly, in 50 years, sank, leaving behind only a little bit of warmth by a comfortable fireside. Menander's audience didn't want anything too much extravagant. They were just out for a pleasant, good entertainment, not too excited or too exciting, but something reassuring, like everyday life. And above all, guaranteed to make no demands upon their intelligence. Just having fun. Comfort, prosperity, safety was the order of the new day. And I wonder whether our young would continue with this comfort, or will they rebel? Under this influence of safety, the Athenians changed so quickly that they were themselves surprised at the changes. They hadn't seen them coming. And so the Athenians, against the disciplined Spartans, lost the war. Now in Rome, they would use, the writers, the comedians certainly, would use the names of foreign places, usually Greek, foreign places and foreign names. They were writing about Rome and everyone understood it, but used these Greek names also in literature because of censorship laws. The law of the 12 tablets condemned people to be whipped. Anyone who wrote anything defamatory, one of Plautus' contemporaries, for example, was exiled. Exile was only second to the death penalty at the time, because of a play that he wrote with one single disrespectful allusion to some dignitaries. He was writing against some Romans, something quasi-divine. And they could not allow any playwright to make them ridiculous. So the writers turned to foreign countries and foreign names, and everything about the play was Roman except the names. And the censor would say, those Greeks, the names, the places, those Greeks who are escaping the censor cities, quote, they're guilty of diminishing the majesty of the Republic. So we all have to be careful not to be diminishers of majesty and majesties. I have a few quotes here from Plutarch and Cicero. I'll read them to you. Cicero spoke of Caesar, Pompei, and Crassus as the three unbridled men. Plutarch shows always, he thinks that political expediency is something abominable. Pompey refused to help his friend Cicero, even when things for Cicero were going so badly that he was practically begging his help on his knees. And he had been one of his best friends. But his character, certainly not aristocratic in spirit, was minor, undistinguished, and heroic soul. Hence unforgiving and resentful. Cicero wrote of Caesar, so great was his... Cicero was on the side of Pompey, not of Caesar. So he says, so great was his passion for wrongdoing about Caesar. So great was his passion for wrongdoing that the very doing of wrong was a joy for him, for its own sake. That was in his obituary that he wrote. Let me see. And Catullus wrote of Rome, addressing Rome, who can witness, who can endure this thing? Only the one who is himself without shame, greedy, a swindling gamester. O Rome, decadent in your debauchery, will you witness this thing and endure it? And now here you are arrogant, money rolling off you, and you go into every bed and all the beds alike. And of Caesar and Mamurra, who was his intimate friend, in this period of decadence, he wrote, how prettily they agree, Mamurra and Caesar, each as vile as the other, with the vice of decadence. No wonder. The dirt that fouls both has sunken deep, nor will it ever be washed away. Sick alike, in the same bed, sweet twins, how prettily they agree. And so, let me just... Yes, and again Plutarch of Cicero. He was without magnificence of mind. Magnificence of mind is not among our best prizes today. But Cicero was not sure that people... This is during the Catullus betrayal, yes. But Cicero was not sure that people were with him, the people were with him. And without that surety, he never could act. Cicero was a great writer, but he was also a politician. And as a politician, he wasn't sure which way to go. That is why he says, was not sure that people were with him, and without that surety he never could act. He had no confidence in himself. Magnificence in a man means one who will live in his own terms, not on those imposed by others. All right. And do I have something else here? There is nothing, he wrote, there is nothing, absolutely nothing fairer, more beautiful, more to be loved in a man than high courage. And so I was reading these things and thoughts were getting to my head. And so I thought about all these traitors and betrayals and people who betray one another for political power, and this plagiarism of democracy. So I'm not going to talk about treason or betrayal, but I find it safer to talk a little bit about deceit and deceivers. And those who were not ready to deceive, but then they have in politics a pat on their shoulders. I can offer you the world and riches. And they turn. Okay, so in descending order, those who deceive with elegance. Philby, for example, the spy from the 50s. Yeah. As Cicero said, who would have possibly thought that this elegant man with a beautiful head of hair, adjusting the hair with a finger, could have betrayed the state? The adjusting of the hair with one finger. I don't think we have too many of those. With that aristocratic elegance. Few words. I think we have more of the second, my second, going down. And those who deceive with eloquence. We have plenty of this. Rather, not eloquence, because that would require eloquence both or elegance both in form and in content of what they're saying. Let us say that they are articulate, good with words, and grammar. Each main clause carefully crafted, with the relative clause in the oration rightly inserted in its proper place, between commas. You can see their spontaneity has been practiced, perhaps before a mirror, at the same time as that slight adjustment to the hair with one finger. The concise, precise adjective, the right adverb, and a reasonable display of vocabulary. Deceiving you with sound, like drums, sound on the outside and hollow and emptiness in the inside. I would put here Douglas Murray. My opinion. And then there are those seemingly eloquent, but who say nothing. They talk and talk and talk and talk, and you are there almost watching the words, and then at the end you say, what did he say? I think these are the charlatans. I would put in this step Jordan Peterson. And then there are those who, at acquired perhaps a certain degree of notoriety, doing this, doing that, in some area. It could be even as humble a thing as having a YouTube comedy channel. And suddenly, perhaps the pat on the back. And you will see them addressing the Oxford Union, debates on politics on television, serious places, asperging us, sprinkling us with their wise words like holy water on the faithful or those willing. They're in training, they're not quite there yet. I would put in this section Constantine something. I don't know his surname. And then we go to yet another, in my opinion, deceiving class. Those who experiencing addressing the public, dealing with the public, questions and answers, interviews, they always know what to say, they're never lost for words. But they are more like the gatekeepers. It's not that they're going to deceive you with their words. Their task is not to persuade you. They know they're not going to, so they ignore that 30% or equivalent of the populace who are more or less awake and can see through some things that the other slumbering 70% can't. And so their role is to, for example, in a television interview, let's say that you're talking about the Palestinians in Gaza, whatever, okay, or the Russians, or these things that are going on right now. I'm not trying to be flippant by saying these things. I'm just, they're serious enough, aren't they? But they use them to, for example, in a television interview, they would ask all these questions. Well, how about this? And how about Putin? And how about Hamas? And okay? And they would have a guest, and he explains how he is mistaken, and this is that. Okay. Oh, all right. And the next day, or the next week, has another, and asks the same questions with the same, but they give them the same answers. It's as if these guys are not listening. So they're not there to ask questions to get informed. They are there in order to throw fog and mist because they are gatekeepers. Their role is not to awaken anybody, not to convince the ones who are already awake, but to make sure that those sleeping will not wake up. That's their role. I would put Piers, what is his name? Piers Morgan there. It is as if their motto would be, the truth and clarity shall not pass. And here is all the fog and all the mist. And then, to conclude, there are a whole bunch of others, as you can imagine, in training, who they try to convince you by force rather than clever ruse. Well, you can see them a mile away. And then everybody else. And then we have a Emmanuel Macron and Ursula von der Leyen and Prime Minister Keir Starmer, all those sort of together like that. And then there is Donald Trump. Yes. Okay. I leave it there. Goodbye.